Now, let's create our data window. We have our database application. So to create the data window, File New, Data Window. Like before, we have multiple styles to pick from. Let's be easy. Let's pick a tabular data window. Remember, on data windows we have different types. We have Quick Select, which a lot of people like. I find a bit too limiting. The query, which you feed it a SQL query. The external data window, where you basically feed it a data structure. Stored procedure, where the data window source comes solely from a stored procedure. Or the SQL Select. It's good enough to get you going. And then my favorite checkbox, Retrieve on Preview. This makes things really easy for seeing how my data window is going to look while I'm still inside the IDE. Let's go to Next. What tables do I want? Let's say this is going to be for dealing with customer orders, because that's the name of the application. So we'll get the customer table and the sales order table. And they have a natural join between them because a sales order is associated with a customer. And there we go. It's not Power Designer, but it shows you what's going on. There's a natural join between the sales order and the customer. So let's look at what fields we want to display. We want to field the customer order ID, the order date, the customer first name, last name, and let's say zip code. So as you can see, it built the SQL. Very simple, dead simple stuff. The sort, I like to sort on something natural. Let's assume sales order ID is a natural key. So we'll sort on the sales order ID. And we won't bother with the where clause or grouping or computes or anything like that. So here's our updated SQL syntax. Very simple, very straightforward, no messing about. In fact, technically I didn't even have to know how SQL works to be able to do this. In fact, that's one of the great things about Pocket Builder and Power Builder. So closing this window, this gives us the option, do we want to return to the data window painter? Yes, please. This is our select for the data window painter. Now the background window color. Let's make it sky blue. And like all the other Power Builder wizards and Pocket Builder wizards, it shows you what it's going to do, gives you the chance to go back and change things. We'll just take everything with it. Okay, we've created our data window, and because of the retrieve on preview, the preview pane's in the middle, and that shows the basic information. And we can modify it a little bit. Like the field, this is the headers. Let's bold all the headers. Trying to select all the header fields. The font, let's make the font bold. Actually, I missed one. And now the word sales order and header, we don't really need the word sales order ID. So the sales order, let's make that order date. And the customer, let's just call this customer name. We can delete the last name fields. Let's stretch this baby out. And the fields. Right now I have the sales order field highlighted. Let's center justify him. Give it a little bit better look. The order date, I really dislike that way of looking at formatting a date. Let's use an edit mask style. I like the word date, MAR for March. And 4-digit year, I'm just modifying the edit mask. I tab off. As you can see, now I have to mess with the formatting a little bit. This is what data windows are for. They're great for doing on-the-fly formatting and seeing how things will look. So that's a little bit more room. There we go. We have enough room to display the 4-digit year, 3-character month name. Okay, life is good. So let's save the data window. Did a file save. Data window, we'll call it D underscore, let's say customer orders. So now that we have the customer orders data window, let's put it on our main form. I'm double-clicking the main window. So there's the main window. And I was playing around earlier, that's why you saw that. Let's add a data window control. Now the data window control is actually a holder for an actual data window. So we'll add a data window control, place it on the form, give it some room, and it'll be called data window 1 because that's just the first name. Which data window do I want it associated with? D_customer order. Now this is just a property. The data window field, or excuse me, the data object field is just a property. So you can change that dynamically at runtime, which comes into a lot of the power from some of the earlier samples you saw, like the DW example sample. That sample used the same database, but showed the data in multiple forms. That was just dynamically changing the data window at runtime. Okay, this is the preview for the data window. Let's run it. What happens? Oh, yes, please. Let's save the changes. Where's my data? My data is not there. Well, how come my data is not there? You know, I have to do the retrieve. So let's put in the code for the retrieve. Classically, the code for the retrieve is either going to be under user action, like a menu option, or for a simple sample like this, we'll just put it when the window itself is opened. So we'll double click the window and, excuse me, for the open event on the window, depending on your vintage of Pocket Builder, they'll be doing different things in the open events. Sometimes in the open event for Pocket Builder and Power Builders, where you'd be putting things like the data window retrieve. But for a better user experience, it'd actually be better to have things that are time consuming, like a data window retrieve, to have that in an event that is executed after the window itself is opened. So the window itself can be open, you can show a splash screen, or at least give the human being the information that your application's alive, and then post yourself an event to the UE post open event. Now this is in the generated code. I haven't done anything. I haven't done any typing here. So let's go over and look in the UE post open event. So let's open the event list, which is it's one of the tabs right next to the open. And notice the event, UE post open. This has some boilerplate code with big comments about, like, for example, do things like DWN set trends object SQL CA. Well, since I wrote the code for all of these templates, I put in the things that you would typically do. I called the SQL connection object, that's SQL CA. That's the standard. I used the data window called DW_1 because when you make a data window, the first one's called DW_1 by default. So, to make our data window work, all I have to do is uncomment these two lines. All this code is generated code with comments about what it's supposed to be doing and things that are classically called by the application open event, blah, blah, blah. All this is in the the template application. So we commented out those two, we uncommented those two lines in the post open event. So what happens in the life cycle of the object? Remember, the application object, customer orders, in his open event, he connects to the database. Now, when the window opens, the main window, when it opens, let's go back to his open event. When the window opens, classically you'll do things like get environment. And then you would do whatever processing happens when you open the window. And then, a moment later, you'll do the time-consuming things. The time-consuming things would be like the UE post-open. Now you're asking, why do I want to do that a moment later than the open event? because the form will not be painted on the screen until the open event is complete. So you want to give the user the comfortable feeling that their application is alive and coming up. So you can do the quick things inside the open event to make it appear that the application is alive. Post an event to yourself to fire the UE post-open event. The post-open event contains the time-consuming stuff, setting the transaction object and the actual database retrieve. So we do that. Yes, please. Let's save changes. And now let's run the application. And we've retrieved our data window. We've retrieved the database information. Notice there's no scroll bars or anything. We can fix that easy. So let's go back to the main window. Let's open his layout. Database. Let's add some scroll bars. Live scrolling. We don't need splitters. Okay, let's run it again. Yes, please. Save it. Now we can scroll through the data both vertically and horizontally. So now we have a live database access on the desktop. The next step is to associate this and deploy and run it on the Pocket PC.